Hey everybody, welcome to Workforce Gaming. I am Brad, here to talk about the Tales of Arise DLC Beyond the Dawn. Now, this is post-game DLC, so if you have not played the main game, which if you have any interest in JRPGs, you should. It was my game of the year a couple years ago. Tales of Arise is an incredible piece in the Tales franchise. Took it leaps and bounds forwards from where it had been the past couple games, and just, it's incredible. So, highly recommend that you do. But if you haven't, this DLC is post-game, takes place a year after, and ultimately deals with the consequences of the ending of the main game. So if you haven't played it, I highly recommend you click stop right now. Thanks for clicking. So if you're still here, let's talk a little bit about Beyond the Dawn. So again, like I said, it takes place a year later, and it kind of deals with, now that the main game is over, how do our people from Dana and Rena, how do they come together in this newly formed world? And I think that that's kind of just a really interesting thing to do, because so many JRPGs, I think, end with these world-altering consequences and these things that are just having this huge effect on a world and this huge effect on the social hierarchy, or huge effects on just like what the world looks like and how the world has evolved. And we very rarely, I feel like, get to kind of explore that in a meaningful way. So that's, I think, kind of the hook that drew me into this, that really made me interested in this, is now that we have a new world, we get to go and explore that a little bit more. So ultimately, the way that we do that is through a new character named Nazamil, who is basically half Renan, half Danon. She meets up with our party, and kind of the gist of the story, and I'm not going to spoil this one. Obviously, we spoiled the main game, but we won't spoil the DLC here. But basically, her whole thing is that she's never really fit in. She meets Elfin in the gang and sees that, okay, we had these worlds that we're fighting, and now we have these worlds that are kind of mashed together, and there's just a lot of tension and friction, and she sees this ragtag group that Elfin's assembled to help him do all of these things, and she tries to figure out, okay, how do I fit into this as somebody who's half Renan and half Danon, and where do I go from here? How do I do this? And when she sees Elfin, it's just kind of this like mind-boggling thing of like, oh, there is a way for me to exist. And basically the DLC is just kind of her story of how does she fit in, what does Elfin's group kind of have to do with that? And that's kind of where the road we go down. If that sounds like more just kind of a glorified side quest, it very much has that feeling. There's nothing hugely spectacular in this. You get to some kind of deep lore in terms of what's going on with how these worlds merged and what's happening there. There's some good lore in there. Ultimately, it comes down to a lot of just kind of that side quest things of what's going on with this one character. And yes, what she's doing has some world-affecting impact, but it never really feels that serious. And I think part of that is just that it's a fairly quick game. I think I was done in about 9 hours. I didn't do much side stuff. Really just kind of focus on the main game about 9 hours, which isn't, for a JRPG, very meaty. Obviously DLC, but it's a $30 DLC, so it's a pretty hefty price tag for 9 hours, and a game of this you might expect a little bit more. So at the start of this, our party gets back together, and that's kind of the fun thing, is obviously seeing these characters interact in this new world and seeing how they adjust to things and all of that. One of the kind of the key things that keeps popping up is Elfin's role in this world, because he's viewed by half of the world as the savior who brought peace and ended this conflict, and the other half is, well, you basically destroyed 2 worlds and made this new world, and some of us were happy where we were, and now we're not. So he kind of deals with this. In one town, he's a savior. In another town, he's hated. So there's a lot playing in Elfin, just in terms of character development, to how he feels and how he fits into this. I thought that was really well done. The rest of our party, again, it's only 9 hours, does not get a ton to do. They're just kind of there doing their normal thing, being who they are. Overall, it's just kind of a nothing story. There wasn't anything really there to really write home about. Again, it's fun to explore the world more. It's a great world. It's a cool world to be in. I love that. But there never really felt like a true thing driving me forward in this. It was just always kind of like, okay, let's keep rolling. Oh, all right, we got a little bit more. Oh, okay, that's slightly interesting. Just kind of that type of thing. They do pull a lot of references into the other things. Elfin's mask comes back, and they talk a little bit more about those masks. You go see a lot of characters from the main game. All those things you kind of expect in a post-game quest. One of the things that I think could be kind of viewed either way, I personally like it just because it gives you a nice level starting point to kind of make this balanced a little bit more, is your data doesn't carry over. So even if you maxed everything out and had max stats, best weapons, all that, it's gone. DLC starts you fresh. basically kind of at a new point where it's like, oh yeah, you've been gone for a year. Here's where you guys are at after that year. Like I said, I think it helps balancing combat a little bit. It helped me jump back into combat just at a level that I didn't feel like I was crushing everything because I had all these super high level characters, and you don't get that feeling of like, well, I didn't do everything in the main game, so my character's under leveled, so I just got to grind in order to get the DLC. So depending on which side of that you're on, I get it. I could see that being a good or bad thing. Gameplay itself, nothing really new here. Your same gameplay. I had a little bit of trouble just because it's been a year and a half, 2 years since I touched this, trying to get back into it, but it is really just the same game. I did have a couple points where I was like, I feel like I'm missing a super move. I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah, how does CP work? I've kind of had those feelings a little bit, but it is just the main game combat a little bit more, so nothing there. You don't really go very much. There's I think there's 3 new dungeons. None of them are particularly interesting in any way. They're all just kind of there. The last one particularly is it feels like overly long, and you kind of have to fight the same mini boss a whole bunch of time. The dungeons were not great in this. And you go between, I think it's 3 or 4 cities. And then there's some connecting areas in between. So it's not a huge area. Again, everything about this is kind of just this kind of small, tight post-game quest, just to kind of, it feels like their thesis is more or less just, you would like to see what this world looks like, so let's show you what this world looks like. We're not going to have any huge things. It's just, let's go live in this new world we created. Let's go see how these cities have changed. Let's go interact with some people and figure out how they're handling this, which is interesting for the runtime. Again, short game, 9 hours. It's interesting for the length. It's not something I would jump on right away and say, oh my gosh, if you play Tales of Arise, you need to play this. But at the same time, there's enough there to kind of just, if you were interested in the ending and thought there was kind of going in a unique direction, I think it's something just kind of cool to just be able to go check out that world a little bit more. But don't expect a whole mind-blowing new story and new crazy gameplay and maps and everything like that. It's just kind of that glorified side quest. I think that's really what you can kind of sum it up as. It is a main story adjacent side quest that you could do, not do. It's not really going to be detrimental to your story, but it's definitely not going to change your opinions of Tales of Arise if you already had very set in stone opinions like I did. I loved it. I liked seeing more of it. How much you like Tales of Arise, I think, will determine how much you like this. We are Workforce Gaming. You can leave a comment below, subscribe to our channel. There's a link to support us on Ko-fi as well. See you later.